And when you're talking about serious discussions on foreign policy, I think many of us, including me and many, have been warning that the unserious shouldn't be making policy decisions. And right now, you have somebody who compared himself to Moses talking to somebody who misspelled martial law when she called for it in the Mark Meadows text. I don't know how serious those discussions are. So when you see Marjorie Taylor Greene actually coming up and saying, hey, we're going to put a motion to vacate on the floor, I really can't imagine, even with the insanity that's going on in the GOP caucus right now, I can't imagine that a majority or even a large minority will back Marjorie Taylor Greene in calling for Mike Johnson's ouster at this time. I just don't think that's going to happen. However, it's very hard to predict insanity. And I think when you're looking at Congress right now, I think that's the issue that you have is that it's so unpredictable and so unserious that something like that might gain traction. But again, I'm hoping that we still have enough serious legislators in there where something like that wouldn't happen at this time.
Hey, Denver, great to have you back. I bet you can predict the reaction to Joe Biden's apparent looming executive order on the border. He talked to Univision last night and said that he's going to do this and start to squeeze the definition of asylum, lower the number of people who are crossing the border. This, of course, is something that's come up multiple times and in different forms, including an actual compromise piece of legislation that was kicked back. What's Mike Johnson going to say to this?
Mike Johnson is actually going to take a victory lap. If you look at it completely politically, he's going to say, listen, our warnings about the border proved fruitful, and we finally have a president who's acting way too late on the border. That's what they're going to message. And they're going to roll that message throughout the entire GOP conference. President Biden's going to say, listen, we've seen the data. There is an issue at the border, and we feel that we have to do this at a time because Congress they're unable to act. Think about these are going to be the competing political visions that you have there, and that's how each will message. One will message that we were right all along. The other will message that Congress is so ridiculous that they have to do something. And if you look at it really empirically, there is a problem at the border. We know that's there. I've been doing national security for 20 years. I've actually done border ops back in the day, things that I really can't talk about as much based on intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance back in 2010 and 2011. So again, there is definitely a problem there. There are issues there, but both will try to claim victory. One, that they've been right all along, and the other that Congress might have been right, but they just can't act on it because they're so misaligned and so chaotic. So I think that's the messaging that's going to come from both camps after this happens.
Well, Denver, you mentioned your intelligence background. It's worth noting that it's not just the border that former President Trump has weighed in on in terms of potential congressional action. Today, he weighed in on the FISA reauthorization, specifically, of course, Section 702, which is the warrantless surveillance program. There's been some concern about the privacy of Americans who may get caught up in some of that intelligence gathering activity. Trump posted on True Social, "Kill FISA. It was illegally used against me and many others. They spied on my campaign." You have a number of House Republicans now, Matt Gaetz, Anna Paulina Luna, Tim Burchett, saying they will vote no on the rule, the procedural vote, to try to get this thing across. Is this once again Trump wielding his power in the House? Is FISA potentially not going to be renewed before that April 19th deadline?
It's a great question. And yes, it is him wielding his power to the House. And look at the people you just mentioned that are voting against it. It's not a surprise. I think they're the same people that want to do the UFO committee. So that doesn't surprise me very much. And, when you're looking at FISA also, FISA is incredibly important to United States security. Anybody who's dealt in the FISA world like I have, when I worked at the National Security Agency, actually should be trying to support FISA in many levels. Of course, we don't want to trample on Americans' rights. We want to make sure that it's properly regulated. We want to make sure that the authorizations are correct. We want to make sure that there's transparency to actually the committees that oversee the FISA process. We want to make sure the intelligence communities are transparent when they're asked for budgeting. Of course, you want to do all that, but FISA is very important. What you have as a president, he's screaming into a popcorn box, and you got people that are actually listening to him. And that's the issue that you have, is that instead of thinking about the actual nuances of policy, protecting American citizens in America based on the ability to use FISA for terrorism or financial activities that support terrorism or criminal activity from foreign sources. We have people that literally believe that aliens are in the Bible talking about voting against FISA based on President Trump putting out a declaration about FISA because actually he's in trouble with the law so much. So I hope everybody got that cascading effect. That's how I like to actually do it. But again, there's an unseriousness in Congress, I think, that all of us in America need to address and point out when this happens.
We're spending time with former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman, the gentleman from Virginia, with us as we wait to hear from Joe Biden. We've been showing you pictures of a ever more busy Rose Garden where he's going to be speaking with the Japanese Prime Minister. Denver, we spoke with Sarah Chamberlain yesterday. here on Balance of Power, the head of the Republican Main Street Partnership. This is somebody talking every day with centrists. And when the matter of Ukraine funding came up, she said something we hadn't heard before. We keep hearing it's going to be weeks, maybe months. I want you to listen to what Sarah said about the potential for an imminent vote on Ukraine, and we'll have you respond. Here she is.
It's going to pass either this week or very early next week, without question.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ukraine.
We haven't seen the text yet.
It's going to pass. They really want to get this moving and get this done, and they want to help Ukraine.
Well, to Kailey's point, we haven't even seen the text yet. Denver, do you actually think that this Republican-led House could surprise us on Ukraine?
I think it's possible. You know, there's always a difference between the possible and the probable. And it's easy to make statements if you're not in Congress like that. But I will tell you this, they sort of have to get the Ukraine aid moving. And I think what you're seeing right now in Russia, what you're seeing in Ukraine, if you're a serious legislator, we have to support Ukraine. It is 100% down the line that anybody that sees Russian history and what's happening in Russia today should support Ukraine aid immediately. And I just want to state that, and that's how I would vote. However, you never know. You got people voting on the rule. Have we had Mar-a-Lago and Donald Trump actually weigh in yet, like he did on FISA? All these things we have to look at. And, you know, those are the type of issues you have to look at. Again, you can only predict the future after it happens when you're in Congress. It's a saying that I learned in intelligence training also. You know, it's very hard to predict the future. I would think that they should have a bill on the floor for Ukraine aid this week. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, but I think it's 51-49 that they do.